get started in a moment. Sorry about me pushing the times back a few times, but trying to get a couple of things set up for the show. We will get started shortly. Alrighty. Let's see. All right. Sorry about that. As you can see, it's just me tonight. Emmanuel had something that he had to do, and Chris, I believe, has family in town. So hopefully those two good gentlemen are having a good evening. And I believe Chris will be with us tomorrow for my other show on the other channel. This topic is not an easy one to talk about. So we're going to try to do this as slow as possible. And to help out, hopefully my phone is charging okay. But I'm going to try to share a couple of videos and a couple of images to help illustrate some of the things which I'm talking about, which I've ran across in my research. There we go. The title of the show tonight is Dark Secrets of Slavery. And the reason why I titled it that way is because a lot of times we like to focus on the transatlantic slave trade. And, you know, though it was horrific, there are a lot of things that we are missing out on if we don't look into some of the other things that were going on as far as the different slaveries that were going on. And so my research took me into going into all the different slaveries that went on throughout time. And in those early days, even people who aren't very religious, I feel like one thing that they can take from the Bible is that a lot of the locations, a lot of the people you can verify, kings in different royalty at least, from a non-believer's perspective, that you can verify those types of things there in the Bible that are verified there in the regular world. So what I like to try to do, since I know that my audience is of a mixed faiths, and I know that some people are just being kind of a good sport and are going to listen and hear me out. Um, so I thank you for those people who decided to tune in. Um, while I was trying to go over the overall, scenario of this whole political matrix and everything that was going on, I realized that it was so massive that I couldn't do it justice of just slapping a couple of videos together. I see Kelly's here. Thank you for joining me, Kelly. And yes, I'm having a happy Saturday. Hopefully you are, and your loved ones also. Um, I realized that this whole political matrix, it has to be broken up into a couple of different categories, and in order for you to understand why certain motivations are going on, you have to understand all the things which led up to the things coming to the way they are at this current moment. And you have to understand also, whether it's the beliefs which you share, you have to understand the beliefs of those people who are engaging in most of the things which are going on in our world, which most of us just happen to be, unwilling participants, and or else fed information which were swayed one way or the other. And a lot of times, on both accounts, we are, what's the term? The useful idiots. You know, um, a lot of times we are giving given portions of the truth, and or we're taught to focus on only certain aspects and not look at the whole picture in totality. And what I decided to do is, though I grew up in a traditional, normal Christian faith, and I guess I'll say average, uh, because most Americans kind of come from, a traditional Christian background. I'm not saying anything wrong with those who grew up otherwise. Um, but those who grew up with that faith grew up like learning certain things. And many of us were just kind of reciting verses over and over and not putting things together. And what I realized is I was looking at politics, I was looking at history, and my religion, and all of these things separately. And until I started looking back to my knowledge of ancient history and just viewing a couple of things through just biblical geography, not even getting into any miracles or walking on water, anything like that. Um, uh, we'll start with basically the time period after the flood. Um, and the reason why I think that's important, because even if you don't believe all the different stories which went on with the people, um, one thing that you do have to admit is that many of the locations, um, well, history shows that many of the locations were named for these certain people. And so, um, in the biblical days, let's see if I have it written out here. I thought I'd written it out somewhere, but it laid out how they were separated, how the different people were speaking different languages after the flood. I know some people may not believe the flood at all, but let's just go for argument's sake. Let's just say the flood was a small regional flood, okay? And let's say everybody in the world only lived in this certain small area. So, to not go into argument's sakes. Um, well, the people who supposedly survived, and I do believe, so I'm saying this for those who don't, there were three sons. And those three sons were Japheth, Ham, and Shem. And these three families, let me get a drink real quick. Got me some tasty coffee, which I let get a little cold, but it's still tasty nonetheless. All right, so this biblical geography, which I didn't understand quite as much as a kid, which I understand a lot more now, is the line of Shem, which most people, which through Christianity is the line of Jacob, Jacob and the line of Israel and all that. But that's not what I want to talk about quite yet. First, I'll talk about the line of Ham. Now, for those who are not familiar with the Bible very much, oh, I see Signs is here. Hey, Signs, glad to see you here. Says, hey, I'm cleaning up a little mess. All right, yeah, go on ahead, do that. Just listen to me. I'm not going to really start showing any images just yet. I got my phone charging because I was hoping to be able to share a couple of clips with you, guys. I don't have my laptop working, so I'll just have to hold it up and show it to you and show you some of the images which I've run across to help lead me to go down this rabbit hole and research some of these things, which before I had no question about. I completely accept them for what people said and what I assumed they were until I went down, digging through different research, and a lot of it specifically from biblical geography and what I know about ancient history. And so I'll go back into what I was saying about the line of Ham. The line of Ham, that is the line which most of the people who descend from Africa come from. That's amongst all the Abrahamic faiths. That's pretty much undisputed. That everybody agrees on that. So that's not an argument there. And that goes into Mizraim, which though that's kind of areas like Lebanon type areas. I'll get into a map at a later date, at a later time, maybe in here if I have enough time. But Canaan, which you hear a lot of biblical stories about, and was a very very famous area. And then Put or Foot, which that is a kingdom in North Africa, which I'm not quite sure exactly off the top of my head. I would have to be digging through, but those are where most of the African kingdoms come from. Then we'll go into the line of Japheth, which the lands of Japheth. Japheth had sons, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshesh, and Tiras. From those sons populated those different areas and whichever different languages they spoke or the languages which they spoke. Some of the ones which I know for a fact off the top of my head, which I can pull up really easily, Magog, for instance. Magog is actually what would be modern day like Moscow, Russia. Um, like Javan, for instance. Javan, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's Greece, but there you can actually literally go through the biblical places, and it'll break down all the different sons and the names. And if you look at some of the names still to this day, some of them still resemble the original biblical names. So that's one thing which you see, which you have to recognize. The line of Shem, which everybody is the big hubbub within religion, which has a lot of people out on street corners yelling at each other and different things like that. Whether people, the approach of how you do things is very important, and I feel like a lot of the ways that we're approaching these situations is incorrect, and I think we need to try to have some more humility and understanding in some of these things. What I researched from the biblical days, from let's go back to the slavery, which most people know the most about, Egyptian slavery in the Bible. We know that was slavery for 400 years. They were out. Moses was in the desert. He said, "Let my people go." And here's where things get a little interesting for me. Most of the imagery, which I've always seen, has led me to automatically believe, um, you know, certain things about the Bible. For instance, you know, you watch what was that, the Ten Commandments, and they have Charleston Heston playing Moses, um, and a lot of those images which you see like that, or even the image which you see of Jesus in most churches, which I don't have to bring that up. I'm pretty sure most of you all know that photo. Um, and I guess I'll tell a little bit about that photo because it'll make sense a little bit more later. Um, the man in that photo is Cesar Borgia from the Borges family. Um, the painting was painted by, I believe it was Da Vinci. Um, yeah, I believe it was Leonardo da Vinci who painted the portrait. Um, that portrait was actually there was an original image before that, which that image was portrayed off of. At the time, which a lot of people don't know about, is many of the royal families were trying to get themselves repainted as different figures in the Bible, and the Borges family is one of those, or Borgias. I'm not sure how it was pronounced back in those days, but they're one of those families which had the money to do that. And also, they were also connected through the royal families, which I believe that his father was one of the popes. So they had the influence to be able to use his image to portray that. And if you think about the time period of when a lot of the Renaissance works were done, when most of them were commissioned by the Catholic Church, um, it was roughly around, let's say, what the 1300s to easily what up to the 1500s. Um, that is not long after the Catholic Church really growing to its full strength and power within the Roman Empire. That would be interesting because the Roman Empire was in control of pretty much the known world at that time. With them being in control of the known world, they were going to portray Christianity in the way they felt like portraying Christianity, which led to a lot of the actual whitewashing of images. Um, I guess I decided to bring up what was his name? If you all are listening, I mean, if you have pencil or pad or you want to type this down, his name is Dante Fortson. It's Dantefortson. He has written a book and did an amazing amount of digging and found, I mean, hundreds, if not thousands, of images showing biblical figures who many I thought were white were not white. And another one, Truth Unveiled. Um, Both of them have, I'm not going to show the whole videos because um, they go through the series, and Dante Fortson there, he actually goes through um, each individual line, um, breaking down from the Strong's biblical texts and various different European sources to prove what he's trying to say in there. Um, One of the big elephants in the room, which it has brought me so much discomfort to talk about, is that issue with race. And I know a lot of people will say, well, why does it matter, the color of God? Why does any of that matter at all? And the reason why it mattered is it mattered at a certain time period. It may not matter as much now, but it mattered at the time period. They needed it for a certain reason. And before I go into all the different other slaveries, I'll go into just the transatlantic slavery alone. If you're taking a bunch of people and you want them to believe in your God, one of the first things you need to do is make them believe that your God is more superior. Yeah, Kelly says Caesar Borgia's father was Pope Alexander the Sixth. Yes, very good. That's why I love my audience. They're able to help me out when my mind is slipping a little bit and not quite as sharp. I'm going to try to bring up this one video to share really quickly. Um, I saw this video, and when I saw this first video, it made me actually have to start to research things because I was like, that sounds a little out there. But I said, okay, I will keep doing more research because this gentleman is I believe he's living actually in Israel, and this was what he wanted. This was a message which he had to say. Hold on a second. Let me let me bring this back to the beginning. Let's see if you can see this. All right. Okay. I will start it here, and I heard this gentleman first. The Jews were brought in Israel. Most of them are white. Not most of them, almost all of them are white. Including me. I was brought in Israel from a country which is called Bulgaria. It's a European country. And I can tell you that in every European country, there are Jews, and there is so-called organization, Jewish Agency, which is trying to take the Jews to Israel. If you track this organization, you can find out that this is not an Israeli organization. This is an American organization. Jewish Agency is an American organization which has the exclusive right to decide who is Jewish, who is not on this planet, and who will be taken to Israel and who is not. Now, if you do research, you will find out that in Africa, in Black Africa, they're looking for Jews only in Ethiopia. They bring Jews only from Ethiopia. And I can tell you by knowing a lot of people who Ethiopian Jews here in Israel that they're treated very badly, very badly. And many of them commit suicide because they cannot take it. So they come from some place in Ethiopia, they don't get much there, but they live decent life. And when they come here, try to be humiliated and so on, and some of them cannot even take it. Now, what I'm trying to say is that why from each white country this Jewish agency is trying to bring Jews, and when it's about Black Africa, they're going to Ethiopia. And this is where they stop. The only one place. Now, because of the same thing, they're trying to do the white supremacy here. They try to bring white guys here and to take the supremacy over Arabs, which are the local citizens, and over blacks, which are so far they're only the Ethiopian Jews. Now, what I'm trying also to say is that another question is why America needs Israel? There is no oil like in other Middle Eastern countries. There's nothing they can be attracted to. But why do they do all these things? Why do they invest money, bring white people and so on? When they build their system of white supremacy, just like in America, they build in Israel. Why? And I can tell you why. Because the true Jews, according to the Bible, you can check it in the Bible, you can read the Job 30 or some other places. They have never been white. They have been people of color. And they have not stopped in Ethiopia. They were in Ethiopia, Sudan, and they have settled in West Africa. From West Africa, they have been taken as slaves to America. Brothers and sisters, blacks of America, it's you. You are the true Hebrews. You are the true Hebrews from the Bible. America gonna do everything, gonna invest as much money as it has, gonna fight as much wars as they can, gonna invite as much weapons as they can just to hide the peace away from you. Gonna take Israel, gonna bring white people here and to tell you these are the Jews, gonna kill you, gonna kill Arabs, gonna mistreat white people like this. All right, that's enough. You guys get the point there. Well, when I saw that one, and I was like, this dude sounds crazy. I mean, I've never read anything like that in the Bible at all. I don't know why anybody would lie about something like that. Why would somebody I mean, why would somebody make up something like that? And then as I started to read in the different passages, um, I would read like just for instance Jesus' description. Now I heard this all the time from the Israelites all the time, and there's always the back and forth about the hair when they say you know hair like wool and white, and some people can say well that's just saying white of the sheep. That's not saying wool as in texture. Well, if you read actual more into Revelations and when it describes his appearance, his feet are showing at the bottom of his robe, and it says his feet are the color of burning brass, of brass basically burnt. Now, anybody that's seen brass that's burnt, you know what color that is. That's obviously black. If you go in and you understand like the word, I guess I'm just gonna have to say the word nigger, where that comes from. It comes from in the Bible, Niger, where they said, I am Niger, meaning I am black. It's said multiple times throughout the Bible that most of the people there are black. Now, I'm not saying that a lot of the people who call themselves Jewish today, that they are not Jewish, that they don't have Jewish blood. I don't know how much mixing that people have within them. Um, or, and I don't know exactly, faith wise, how the whole adopted in exactly thing works. I've heard multiple arguments, and I will let those people who want to argue those different things go back and forth on them. Um, but what I do know is that especially like when we do a lot of these DNA tests, one thing that's extremely fraudulent about the whole DNA issue is most of that DNA, which they judge to decide who is actually of Jewish ancestry, is only about 200 years old. I don't know how in the world that could justify anything legitimate to people of biblical days. Um, then I started to research other information. And some of the other information, which I started to hear from people, um, was going into some of the other slaveries. And when you go into the Assyrian slave trade, the Assyrian slave trade, the Assyrians actually made, they actually drew images, or not drew images, but they actually carved images in the walls. I think I have a couple of those images. Oh, here, hold on a second. I will show you. Here's the oldest picture of Jesus Christ, which was found in Cairo. Let me see if that's not too blinding. You see that all right? That is the oldest image of Christ. Now, why would the Catholic Church change this image? I mean, if it's just about faith and it's not about race, why would you need to change the image? And the reason why you would need to change the image is because you planned on enslaving people who look similar to that, and it would help with asserting dominance. Um, I have another video that I wanted to share. Um, it was pretty interesting where it's a bunch of people going into. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on. It was very interesting. But it's one thing if you hear a bunch of black radicals on the corner yelling out that black people are Jewish. But when you start hearing it, when you even start noticing it, even in TV, man, I hate that I can't find this clip right now. But you all can look this clip up on TV. there's literally like, and I guess in the comment section I'll come back and I will put a link to that video, and it goes through throughout Hollywood where different TV shows where they're hitting at the fact that God is black or Jesus is black and things like that. And when it does describe God, it does say that he has hair of wool, not saying the colors. It does say the texture, and it says, you know, the color, both being of wool. Um, and that that breaking down of those people and being able to control people with religion. I mean, for instance, the Book of Eli. It was showing kind of how one person would try to keep people from being able to read it. And if you go back to a lot of the Dark Ages, most people couldn't read the Bible. And if you go through slavery, that's a big reason why they kept a lot of the slaves from reading the Bible or only reading certain passages. And if you go into actually the history of the Bible, a lot of people don't who read the Bible today don't realize this. They always talk about that there's 400 years lost in the Bible, and that's not actually true. There's 400 years they decided to remove from the Bible, and if you put the, I believe it's 14 books, but I know that there's more. If you put those books of the Apocrypha, um, that matches up to the whole 400-year timeline. And if you read other passage of the Old Testament or the New Testament, they actually refer to certain things that are actually, they refer to certain books or verses within the Apocrypha, showing you that it is supposed to be a part of the full text. When you get into more of the full text, you start to learn about the other major slavery, which isn't talked about after the Egyptian slavery. And that would be the Assyrian slavery, which happened to the northern kingdom. That slavery, which happened to the northern kingdom, spread, to everywhere, because some of the practices which they would do was they would take people from one land, move them to another place, put other people in their land, and try to keep everybody mixed up. And some of the actual photos, I think I might have at least one photo of one photo I can find, hopefully not too far down in here, where it shows one of the actual one of the slaves that the Assyrians had. One of the carvings on the wall. There it is. All right, this is the image. Sorry, that's blinding right now. Let's find the right angle. Does not want to show this. Hold on. Let's kind of pull it back. Well, can't show that right now. I guess it's too. But in the image, if you can see it, they have full beards, and they actually look like they have cornrows going back all the way across their head. Um, and those are the people which they took into slavery, and they actually called those people Jews. Not actually Jews. They called them. Well, I think they called them Judeans, but yeah, they were referring to those people as basically Israelites. Let's see. I see Ziggy's in the house. What did you say, Ziggy? Creating Christianity a weapon of ancient Rome, that the gospel and other books of the New Testament were not the eyewitness accounts of illiterate laborers. Well, what I think they did is they intentionally decided, because what a lot of people say, which is wrong, is they always say that Constantine got this vision of the cross and a dream, and he decided to put crosses all over his shield and join the Christianity. That's not true. What he did was he saw that Christianity was on the rise. And what he did was he jumped in front of the movement and co-opted it. And he took a lot of his pagan beliefs. That's where you get Christian from. That's where you get Easter from. That's where he pushed a lot of these things in. He just moved certain holidays to pagan to actually pagan dates and time periods. And so what he did was he just intentionally kept trying to move this or use this, and that's what like a lot of the argument, which at the Council of Nicaea, what a lot of people don't understand about that is all that was doing, that was trying to affirm whether they believed in like a holy trinity or one God, or if there were gods up under gods. And really, if you understand the text and you read it enough, God even basically says, put no other God before me. So he's explaining that there are other gods. He's just basically saying that I'm above them. And so I say God as in lowercase gods, which that can be demons and spirits and all of these other things which we used to hear about. And I believe where a lot of those spirits or demons or whatever, that maybe some of them still might be around, where I think a lot of the myths of like Dracula and werewolves and all of those things, I believe, come from actual, you know, biblical prophecies, and you can see some of it in there. And if you just look at historical writings, not I mean non-biblical, of just accounts of people, historical accounts in those times, a lot of those things actually make a lot of sense. What else you say, Ziggy? Let's see. Let's see, such as Matthew's, Luke, Paul, but were fabricated by the power of a Roman Jewish family with a name. There is a lot of truth there. Well, what they did is they, and here's something which I had to understand. What the biggest lie is, they twist the whole grace argument. And what they tell everybody is, oh, well, when Christ came back and died, everybody's under grace, so you're all good. But that's not what it actually says. It basically, Christ himself says, I came back to fulfill the law. And not one tittle or not one tittle will be ignored, basically. So it's like, all that means is God's not going to be striking people down for whichever sins, you know, at the time. And you're basically on like a tab. And so when it comes to everybody's judgment, then, you know, you'll have to answer for whatever's on your tab. So if you were, you know, massive sex traders and slavers and all this stuff, that's going to come back to you. Let's see what else. Ephesians 6:5, slaves obey their earthly masters and will respect and fear and sincerely. Well, when you get into that area, in here's one thing: the Bible, it does not go against slavery necessarily, because if you understand what it says that God sends certain people to enact slavery on other people as punishment for his people not following commandments. And that's part of what I feel like the big lie about the grace thing. If it has little things like, if you're not supposed to eat pork and you're eating pork and God gets upset with all the people who eat pork, he's going to start punishing people. And that's kind of like where it goes, by them not telling you what you should be doing. It's kind of setting you up for failure. Obey your earthly masters. Oh yeah, because in the end times, all of those nations and those people at the top, those people will be, as Revelation says, be taken into bondage. So that's why it's saying obey your earthly masters, because it's saying those people who did all that stuff will be enslaved. Now they took that and twisted that to, I've enslaved you, so you need to do what I'm saying. And they take a lot of those verses out of context and use them however they want to. Colossians 2 slaves, another nice guess. The university in Florida that has begun documented slave shipwrecks. There are dozens that were never raised because they weren't carrying valuable cargo. Yeah, I mean, it's horrible. They did do a lot of that. And I noticed one slavery that we don't talk about that's pretty horrible also is the Arab slave trade. And now to this day, a lot of countries, I believe it's Ghana, Nigeria, I think it's like Uganda, and I think it's like 5 or 6 countries where they're starting to admit that, yes, we did go and take slaves. And I mean, it's kind of heartbreaking to me. Like, one of my like childhood like kind of hero people was Shaka Zulu. And then when you realize Shaka Zulu was actually going around rounding up what some people believe and what some of this research leads to be African Jewish slaves, and it was basically Arabs against Jews even in that time period. And so that's part of the diaspora also, which is not talked about. And the reason why I feel it's not talked about is the people who are pushing the agenda at the top that are calling themselves Jewish. I'm not saying that it's every single one, but like the Rothschilds, I believe that's somebody who directly pointing out. But I don't know what a lot of other people's ancestry is. Um, if you go into the Bible and you where the name Ashkenaz comes from, Ashkenaz comes from the son of Gomer or Japheth, which most people automatically know is what would be the white race would come from Japheth. Um, and the son of Japheth's son, Gomer, son leads to Ashkenaz. And that area which Ashkenaz went to, which would have been, um, that would have been kind of, let's see, kind of on the borders of like Turkey and Poland and all those areas over there. They would have kind of, they actually bear a much closer ancestry to, blood-wise, actually, to Attila the Hun. Oh, here's another one. Let me see if this one, if you can see this one clearly. No, I guess all of these are too bright. Yeah, too bright. But this one's another one where they have cropped beards. They have short braided hair, showing that a lot of those slaves who they were saying that they were taken from North Africa were of African descent, and that they were of African Jewish descent. Um, and so where a lot of this and what it talks about in the Bible, where it's talking about like one group is definitely going to be enslaved. It talks about, and I'll let people figure out whoever they want to say this is. They say the Edomites, and the line of Esau and Amalek. Um, some of the Hebrew Israelite camps. Hold on, let me get a drink real quick. They're in the they're in the thinking and the mindset of calling all white people, Edomites, and I don't agree with that. Senator, we have no clue what most of us are mixed with, so it's not fair to say that. What it says by the Bible though is you tell people by their spirit, and if you are the people who are trying to perpetrate wars and things like that, then you are obviously the spirit of Esau. And so that would be the people in particular. So what I'm saying is those bloodlines who are twisting up religion, who are twisting up politics, and who are involved in all of these schemes, um, the the same Freemasons, the same Illuminati, the same people who are involved with everything that we wonder about, that we have questions about. All of these people, I believe, are the line of Esau, or that would be the actual Edomites. So um, that's why I say we don't know who exactly anybody is, and everybody's so mixed up. So everybody can have a little bit of so-called Edomite blood within them, um, because where that line comes from is Mount Seir, for those who don't know. And Mount Seir is basically where the Caucasus Mountains meet. If you see some of the imagery of Mount Seir, it's actually kind of beautiful for back in those times that they would have built something like that. But if you look at it, the pillars are eerily similar to Greek and Roman and even um, American architecture. And so, what I believe is obviously some of those people, whether they're most of the people in charge, some of the people in charge, or whether it's kind of like Hydra, where some of them have just kind of blended in within the scenes and we have no clue who's who. That's who I believe who those people actually are. And I believe they are the reason why they've lied about those images and distorted it for people to not be able to pick up on what's really going on. Also, by doing that, through what it says in the Bible, when you go into what it says about the Jewish people, and it talks about the blessings and curses, and I think I will probably, if I can find the video, might let the video play, um, and let these people speak instead of myself, because I think they lay it out better, and sometimes it's better hearing it from somebody else, and most of these people, which I was hearing it from, were white people. That's why it really caught my attention, even more so that I'm hearing this from white people, not the traditional black people who I hear who are yelling on street corners, who maybe I thought were just crazy before. Hold on 1 second. I've been going through so much research and I have so much videos in here that it's hard to actually sift through everything that I have here. Let's see, 1 second. There we go.
His actions of Shlomo Sand, a professor of contemporary history at Tel Aviv University and author of the book The Invention of the Jewish People.
Here we go. I will go to.
Of it is when he came here, he didn't look like me. So what am I going to do about that? I'm going to make him look like me. So for hundreds of years, we've been telling you, and now you have to keep in mind that we took away any other God that you might have through force, through fear, through pain, through any means necessary. So now I'm going to give you a God, but I'm going to do that in a way that is going to further me. So I'm going to give you a God that looks like me, so that when you bow down to that God, you're bowed down to me.
See, it's a little bit more, so hold on.
Because the reality is, the Bible tells us what Jesus looked like when he walked here. The Bible tells us what he's going to look like when he comes back. We have taken that and changed it. Do you remember when Jesus went to Egypt? He hid in Egypt. The people in Egypt, honey, they're not white people. How could he hide that? See, so that we've done that. We've given your people a God that looks like me, so that you don't have any qualm about bowing down to me. See, because this is the image of God. I don't know of any sin that we've committed that's greater than that one.
But that's what I was basically saying about how if you can take that image, you can help break people down mentally. And one of the first things which was said that happened when they would bring a lot of people across is first thing they would do is shave their beards, because keeping a beard is part of the laws which you're supposed to keep in Jewish culture. Let me try to skip forward to a little bit more, another part. Okay, here we go. Sorry.
Those of you who've been watching this show may perhaps recall that several weeks ago, we talked about the fact that most of the Jews alive in the world today may actually be descendants of Russian converts. Now, Jews like to consider themselves to be descendants of Israel. So the fact that Russia was once a Jewish nation for 500 years, in fact, and that most Jews who are alive today may be more closely descended from Attila the Hun than from King Solomon. These are facts which are just glaring facts, and it's incredible that such things can be ignored. And the how such things could be ignored has an answer, and the answer is collusion. All the parties involved have silently agreed, even perhaps without ever talking to each other, they've silently agreed to just not discuss this subject. In the case of the Russian Khazar Jews, it's embarrassing and frightening to Jews to consider the possibility that they may actually be descendants of converts and may have very little Israeli blood in them. The whites wouldn't want to admit such a thing, because whites like to feel superior and like to think that their superiority is somehow permanent, decreed by God. As for blacks, if you look into the black civilizations that we're going to take a look at momentarily, you find something pretty interesting. You find that those civilizations actually arose as Jewish civilizations. But the truth of the matter is that the roots of black greatness historically lay in Judaism. For whitey, it's great to keep black down. And for the blacks, it's great to not admit that in the past you were a Jew.
Now, another thing I want to touch on is in Deuteronomy chapter 28. Now, the first 14 verses are talking about God is telling the Israelites, okay, if you keep my commands, this is what I'll do for you. The remaining verses, he's telling them, if you don't keep my commands, then this is what will happen. I want to read chapter 28 and verse 68. It says, "And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you." Now, if you were to get a globe, and you were to look at where the Hebrew Israelites were at, they would not need a ship to get to Egypt. So God was obviously talking about something else. He wasn't talking about the physical land of Egypt. If you look in Exodus 13:3 and Deuteronomy 20 and verse 2, it refers to Egypt as a house of bondage. Now, I want to show you something, and I know everybody has seen this. I saw it a million times, but never paid any attention and never really thought twice about it. But on the back of the dollar bill, there's a pyramid. Now, pyramids are notorious with Egypt. I mean, you say pyramid, that's automatically what you think of is Egypt. So why would the United States of America put a pyramid on the back of their dollar bill? Now, with the word Egypt meaning house of bondage, God was obviously telling the Israelites, hey, I'm going to put you back into slavery. Now, the only race of people that were brought over on ships and sold as bondmen and bondwomen, which are slaves, are the so-called African Americans. That's the term that the white man has given them. Now, like I said before, if after you do this research, which I don't expect you to take anything that I'm telling you, look it up for yourself, do the research. That's what I did. Anytime I was shown a scripture, shown something in a book, I'd look it up myself and do the same thing. And if at the end of that you still can't see it, then I really don't know what else to say. But I want the Black Hebrew.
All right, so I'll pause it there. So Old Testament was a controversy for Bronze Age people. I only see half of your face. Oh, I'm sorry that I covered that up. But I mean, when I start hearing that over and over, and I actually went in and started to read. Now I can go in myself and go and pull up those verses more closely and look at them, and it was just startling to me how eerie it was to what a lot of the blacks and Native Americans and so-called Hispanics and Latinos went through in this country, and it's like the Bible was predicting it. So in order for it to be other people, mostly European people, then they would have to fit certain curses, or unless they did everything perfect. They did everything perfect. And if you look through the Bible, there's no time it says my people are a stiff-necked people. So if it says that they're a stiff-necked people, it's not likely that they would all of a sudden be perfect and not get into trouble again. And so you have to take, so the other aspect is, okay, they did get in trouble again. And who are they? Let's see, where is that exactly? I have so much stuff that I keep in here. Because like she was saying, the first 14 verses go into the blessings. And then the next ones, what she was saying, here's a couple more. Israel shall become troublesome to all the kingdoms of earth. And if you think about what is it like for most blacks and Latinos and Native Americans especially, um, in most nations, they're kind of on the bottom. They're normally occupying a lot more of the jails than they do in average population. It says Yahweh will strike Israel with madness and blindness and confusion of heart. Israel shall be only oppressed and plundered continually, and no one shall save her. And if you look at the situation, we've had Martin Luther King, we've had all kind of different leaders who've tried to come out and speak for different causes and around the world, and no matter what, it just never pans out for some reason. Then it says, Israelites shall betroth a wife, and everybody knows that means marry, but another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build a house, but thou shalt not dwell in it. So I mean, that's talking about literally building plantations in slavery. In my opinion, they shall. Oh well, it says it right here. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, but shall not gather the grapes. Meaning, you're going to be doing all the work, but you're not going to benefit anything from it. Israel's sons and your daughters shall be given to other people, and their eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all day, and there shall be no strength in their hands. So, meaning no strength in their hands, nothing that they can do about it. And if you think about it, which people have watched their people go into slavery generation after generation and couldn't do anything about stopping their children go into that slavery? It says, a nation whom Israel has not known shall eat the fruit of its land, shall produce its labor, and Israel shall only be oppressed and crushed continually. So shall she be driven mad because of the sight which her eyes see. And I mean, I think that's clear. I'll go on a little bit more. Yahweh will bring Israel and the kingdom who Israel sets over her to a nation which neither she nor her fathers have known. And there Israel shall serve other gods of wood and stone. Most black people, most Native Americans, and most Latinos actually, if you think about it, wood is most crosses are made out of wood. Stone, Islam, their Kabbalah stone is their major, thing for Mecca, and that's the two top things which most black people actually, that's what they worship. It says Yahweh will bring Israel and the kingdom who Israel sets on her side to the nation which. Oh wait a minute. Wait a minute. Yes, I already read that part. Sorry. And it says, Israel shall become an astonishment, a proverb, a byword among all nations, where Yahweh will drive her. And if you think about it, I've even seen in China, I've seen in Japan, I've seen the racism which has went on for black people, no matter which nation they're in. That's the reason why we have Black Lives Matter, which is going crazy literally around the whole entire world. Let's go on to 43 and 44. The alien who is among Israel shall rise higher and higher above her, and Israel shall come down lower and lower. He shall lend to Israel, but Israel shall not lend to him. He shall be the head, and Israel shall be the tail. And it says, if you are Israel, you're going to be behind. You're going to be the tail. You're going to be the lowest of the low. If you notice, who are most of the people you see, unfortunately, at a lot of these check cashing places, borrowing money and stuff? It's normally a lot of people who look just like me. And right here, what I'm seeing in biblical scripture is telling me these are the things which are going to happen to you. I have a little bit more. Let's see, verse 48. Therefore, Israel shall serve their enemies, whom Yahweh will send against them, in hunger and thirst and nakedness and need of everything. He will put a yoke of iron on Israel's neck until he has destroyed them. Now, when it's saying like we'll serve their enemies and we'll have to, sin against them for everything. If you think about it, black people in this country, even the ones who own businesses, have to get their stuff from somebody else. They don't own anything on their own. We don't own our own water. We don't own most of our. Even if we own a house, still got to pay taxes on it to somebody else. I mean, there's nothing that we actually really own. And if you even think about people like, say, Nick Cannon. Now, I don't agree with Nick Cannon saying that white people are savages and they can't have feelings and that nonsense. But that I do agree that maybe some of the people who are saying they're Jews, maybe they're just converts, and it's nothing wrong with being a convert. But but if there are actually people out there who actually do share this bloodline, they need to know so they can be brought into the fold also and be able to share this blessing. Um, when it's talking about put a yoke of iron. I mean, we can look back to Egyptian slavery. We don't know if there were actual yokes of iron. None of the hieroglyphs or anything that I ever saw that they put actual iron around their necks. It was mostly just chains on their hands or their feet. But in actual American slavery, yes, they did actually put yokes of iron and weird prongs and things coming off of their neck. That's something which is said. I mean, you can look up tons and tons of photos to see that. It says, Yahweh will bring a nation against Israel from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flies, a nation whose language Israel will not understand. Now, I want to pause back on that part because in that time period, the nations who used an eagle for their symbol, you had the Greek Empire. They used an eagle. The Romans used an eagle. The British used an eagle. Did I say the Germans? Because they used an eagle also. The Dutch, they used an eagle. And I'm forgetting. Yeah, I think that's pretty much most of them in name that those who, an eagle would come in. It's ironic that they would all have an eagle for their symbols. Even still, most of them still to this day. And let's see, what was that other part? It says they will come, what does it say? I lost my spot, sorry. It say a nation whose language Israel will not understand, a nation which with fierce countenance, which does not respect the elderly, nor show favor to the young. And if you look back through slavery, they were brutal. They didn't care about, the young, the old. And if you look into Assyrian slavery, what the Arabs did during that time, they literally were bashing the babies' heads. They were bashing like the baby boys' heads during the Assyrian slavery. And then it talks about, a language which you won't understand. If you think about it, most of those people were forced to speak either English or Spanish or Portuguese, which those were languages which they did not speak. And, like I said before, they didn't show any favor to the elderly and the young. If you couldn't work, you were just dead, basically. So Yahweh will scatter Israel among all people from one end of the earth to the other, and Israel shall serve other gods which neither of them known their fathers before would have known, which that part reiterates again, which if you think about it, what nation can you name where there are not black people? I mean, literally, black people are everywhere. Yahweh will take Israel back to Egypt in ships by the way which I said to you, you shall never see it again. And that's one thing which I found interesting. It says, Israel, you will never see it again. And so basically, if you go further on into the Bible, it talks about when the end of days comes, that's when you will be brought back to Israel, and I will bring you back then. And so if the people who are there now are actually all of the actual real people, all all completely formed, like it says in the Bible, like all the full 12 tribes are already there, then in the days prophecy and all that stuff, mark of the beast, all that stuff should be going on right now as we speak. I mean, and none of that stuff is happening quite yet. So, or it should have actually already happened when, because they've been a nation for what, 60, 70, 80 years almost, and none of that stuff happened. It also said that at the time when Israel is back in his nation, Israel will be calm again. And it says, until that time, Israel will be a trembling cup. The whole time which the Palestinians and Israelis have been, going at it back since they first established, there's been nonstop conflict. And the Bible prophesies that there would be nonstop conflict until the actual people are back into their lands. And I don't say that to try to attack people who have grown up believing that is their faith completely. I mean, it's nothing wrong with it being their faith, but if you know this truth now, you should be trying to reach out to other people and say, hey, well, maybe you might be Jewish. Maybe you need to look into your ancestry so we can help get you, to the homeland or get you back into the faith, instead of looking at it as an attack against, non-African, people who don't come, specifically of the line, as you, however you want to say it. Let's see. And here's the last thing that I wanted to say here. The last verse caught my attention. And they shall be upon you for a sign and a wonder, and your descendants forever. I mean, it's saying that these things you're going to be going through all of those curses. Those will be the sign, how you tell which the actual people are, if they're going through all of those things. And when you go through that many different things, there's a lot of stuff which you have to be saying that your people are going through. And if they're not going through all of those things, then you probably should start having some questions for your rabbi or people who are around you. And I guess that the cat's out of the bag on that. And so where I wanted to dovetail by getting that information out is, this is not to attack any people this is not the middle class, kick average, Joes who have grown up believing certain things. And this is not anything like that. It's not not trying to be hate speech or any of that stuff. This is just going on what I've read through the Bible, what I see through actual images, what I see through actual archaeology, what is actually shown. And I'm going to be more likely to trust something etched in stone thousands of years ago, which somebody obviously took a lot of time to make that image, than what a certain rabbi told your grandfathers long time ago. So I'm sorry if that upset somebody. Let's see what else he says. Quantum physics scientist and philosopher and Hebrew. He decoded Genesis. Well, I try. There's some other things which I've noticed about Genesis too, which this gets into a tricky area, and I figure I'll just throw this out for fun, because this will really test people's faith. If those people who say that they actually believe in the Bible, if you want to test them, ask them if they believe in the flat earth. Because according to Genesis Bible scriptures, it tells you that it's a flat earth. That's a whole nother topic of debate that will be fun to get down, but it's been already over an hour, and I think I got as much of that crammed in as I could. If there's any questions or anything about it, and you guys want to go back over more of the information, or want me to detail more information or give you more sources that I have, where I've researched a lot of this information from, and a lot of this is literally taking, like, for instance, Flavius Josephus is some of my research, which I went into. What is it? The 13 Tribes by Arthur Kessler. That's one of the books that I've researched into. What is it? What was it? African. Ju- Uh, what was it? I think it was Jewish Encyclopedia and Africa and African Jewelry. In that book, it like explains a lot of terms and what they meant in the Bible and trying to decipher different things and led to certain precepts to look through the Bible. Um, I also believe, let's see, because that's the one thing that I especially want people to take away. I don't want everybody to take away that I'm saying every single person there in Israel is not Jewish and you can't be Jewish by faith. I don't know well enough to argue any of that. So that's not my point in saying that. What I'm saying is it, it, everybody who is of the Jewish faith should want all the tribes to all be united. And if this is new information that some of those tribes are still out there, you never even thought about the fact that they could be some of your black and Latino brothers who maybe you've been fighting for through Black Lives Matter, or your parents have helped, through the civil rights era. Now's the time where you can actually help and realize, oh, wait a minute, these might be my cousins, in a sense, my own family. So I feel like now's the time to try to have more unity on that front and try to teach maybe some of your black and Latino and native brothers and sisters, some of the different things about, our culture. Um, uh, Something else which I found interesting that I thought that I would bring up. Um, they found, and hopefully this image is not too, hopefully it's not too off and you can't make it out, but they actually found the Ten Commandments in Hebrew. Um, oh, this is something that I wanted to show. If it, let's see, nah, it's not gonna be clear. But this was a map which some of the slavers had. And this goes over what's called the Gold Coast. And for any of you listen out there, look up Negro Land. If you look up Negro Land, you will see on the map a certain little area within Negro Land and the Gold Coast, which actually says Judea or Judah, which is pointing to, Judah being right there. So that's like let's see. Oh, and I guess I won't try to pull that up because I see the glare is just too big of an issue. But definitely look up the Ten Commandments in Hebrew in America, and you start looking up all those artifacts, and it's just tons and tons and tons of stuff. And what I believe from a lot of things which I've read is after the Assyrian slavery, um, those those people were, some of them were captured through slavery and sent into Europe and all kind of other areas. Some were captured and sent through the Arab trades and then went in through the Silk Road trades that went into Asia, because there were Asian slaves throughout China and Japan also. And then even later on, some slaves which came from, say, like Great Britain, were brought through later with popes and bishops, because many of them also had slaves. Um, but there were, I found images and a lot of information about um, how the trek, where a lot of what we call so-called Native Americans and indigenous people to that land were possibly some of those lost tribes. And some of the mixing, I'm not sure, more than likely with the Spanish and Portuguese, is what led to a lot of the changing of the features. And if you go into, I mean, well, I'm talking about a lot of the complexion. And so it's very fascinating. Once you start looking into all that information, it's tons of stuff. Let's see, flyest ever from the Flat Earth Society started out all around the globe. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of, I started hearing about friends and they start talking about the flat Earth stuff, and I was just like, man, just no, it's and I realized I don't have to go out and try to find the proof. I just one thing that I know is these people lie so much about so much stuff, and I found so many holes or so many things which they've left out. Like for instance, when you go into that group of people in the Caucasus Mountains, and I'm sorry, this is a lot of people. Some of you have some of this in your ancestry. Um, into the Caucasus Mountains for thousands of years. They ate kind of like cannibals and cavemen, and it's actually in the Bible about how eventually, when Christianity was brought to them, they started, cleaning themselves up, and they started working on what actually cooking their meat and being more hygienic. And but some of those diseases still spread across with some of the people who were, who didn't take on, the hygiene traditions of some of those early Abrahamic faiths, in which most of those pagans did not believe in a lot of those same hygiene issues. So a lot of them were spreading diseases all around. Um, let's see, energy cannot be restored, only transformed. Physics 101. Yes, true. Look at your hands, move your fingers. That's all electricity. Yep, your brain. All of this stuff is electricity, and I believe, and it even talks about it in the Bible when it talks about describing. I believe it's talking about describing God's face, and it talks about lightning and electricity. It being wisdom, power, energy, and where our bodies are all, you know, tuned to that. And those are different sciences, which I'll leave for some of you who understand a lot more about the whole kinetic or comedic sciences and reincarnation. I do know that in the Bible it does talk about, it does, what I've seen, reference into reincarnation, because there's many times where they even ask Jesus, like, are you this person? Because they're assuming that he's somebody who's come back, because there's a couple of times where it hints at where they believe that he might be Moses. So, I mean, it gets interesting, and I realize a lot of these TV shows which we watch, when they talk about people switching bodies and things like that, all of this stuff is coming from a lot of the biblical stuff, which it's kind of been stripped out of the Bible or not talked about, and they just talk about the Jesus loves you, and it's like, let's get to some of the actual interesting things, because every like most crazy, interesting action, sci-fi, whatever story you have is basically there in the Bible. Because if you look at it through the Bible lens, I know most people believe, well, dinosaurs are millions of years and this and that and whatever. Um, but through biblical standpoint, um, they would have all been there at the same time. So if you think of, say, like Star Wars, for instance, all the funky, weird animals that they were walking around with, that would have been more like biblical times, kind of in my perspective. Let's see, holy dance, electricity, and brain fire, hyperdimension. Yeah, Ziggy, you're gonna have to. You're on that good stuff. And take down the scale and model like basketball days or whatever. Yeah, but somebody showed me this one video, and if any of you are interested, leave it. Make sure you comment in the comment section, and I will show you this video. It I don't know. I will let you all decide what you think on it, because it's this one part in there in particular where there's a rocket going straight up, and the rocket goes straight up, straight up, straight up, straight up, and it literally just stops. It doesn't crash, it doesn't break, it just like stops, and it's like slowly all the spin just kind of goes out and just kind of sits there. And then when I hear stuff about like, what was that, Operation Goldfish, and like it was basically like Dominic, which means Lord, and so you're talking about Operation Lord and Goldfish. That kind of weird to me. They both launch off, the Russians and the Americans both launched off more nukes into the sky than they did all of World War II. So to me, that's really weird also. Um, and nobody ever wants to explain why that happens. But I mean, and even if you listen to people like Bill Nye, they're going to start to explain that we live in a closed atmosphere. We can't get out of it. I mean, even those who don't believe in a flat Earth necessarily, they even say the Van Allen belts, you can't get through them. So one or the other. I mean, I don't know how they want to look at it. Um, what did Kelly say there? Oh, wait a minute. Let me go back. That's a good one. Science. We should start a parity society, the Flat Water Society. We can take turns arguing about why we can't see the tall buildings close to coast mountains, 80 miles away from our. I mean, um, here's one thing that I found pretty interesting. Um, if you go back to the one image which NASA released, which they say is actually from the moon, because you know every other image that we see now is an actual composite, and they admit that it's composite. The one image which you see, it is a Gail Peters. Um, I mean, not the Gail Peters. It's the Mercator map, and those who are familiar with the whole controversy with the Mercator map and the Gail Peters map, Mercator map is the way it's set. The European nations are bigger than they actually are, and the European nations are, I mean, not the European, but the African, well, most of the nations of color are all smaller, and by them being smaller, it's also trying to assert, you know, dominance and things like that. But if we're still using that same map, and that's the map which is on the image, which they say they took from actually being, you know, heading to the moon, and we know that that's a fake image due to cartographers just telling you the size of actual land masses, then you know right there that that image that they said they took from the moon is false. And they can say they still went to the moon and we just didn't take any pictures of it, but you can't say any of those pictures are legitimate. Because I'll go into the moon landing, what I believe that how fake that is. I guess real quick. Let's see. What did she say? I hope that if I'm reincarnated, that I come back and rich and healthy. Well, from how I understand it, from some of the people I've been kind of talking Bible theories with, they say that we all kind of do come back. We just don't remember it. And so, whoever we kind of were before we come back, in a sense of that, that's why it says in the Bible, you'll be punished for your forefathers, because technically you are your forefathers, is what they're saying. So, if you were like a slave master, you did some of that stuff, you kind of regenerate and you still have a little bit of that personality in you. So you might be this landlord who doesn't care, who kicks people out on the street because thousands of years ago you were a tyrant who, you know, raped and savaged people. So I mean, that's some of the theories which we've kind of been talking about. And say if you were a prophet back in those times, you might come back being one of those street prophets out there, you know, trying to get people's attention. So it's interesting. Ziggy says we cannot go to Antarctica. Yeah, and here's something that I'll send that video. I'll definitely send it to you. Actually, what I'll do is I'm gonna link it up under this when it goes for the recast or when it pops back up. I'll put the video in there. It's a documentary. It's probably about an hour long, but maybe an hour and a half, and it breaks down like all kind of different flat Earth theories. It breaks down all the different theories of the cosmology from all kind of different faiths, whether it's the Aztecs, Mayans, all of these different people, what they believe, whether it's Buddhist, whatever, and it's fascinating that all of a sudden Copernicus, what, like 150, what, I can't remember. My mind's getting jumbled at this point with all these different numbers, and that's something which you notice if you do biblical math, which I know that sounds a little crazy, but this is part of going down this rabbit hole. If you literally take the couple thousand off of everything, all the stuff lines up to the same biblical chronologically. So it'll be like, you know, if this happened in like 2000 BC, you'll see that the time which scientists say it was 2.5 billion, you know, years, and it's actually 2000. And the Bible says it's 2000. And so it's like, which one should I believe? I mean, when you go into the whole caveman theory, and they talk, oh, cavemen were thousands and thousands of years ago. Well, no, actually, in the Bible it says basically the people who were in Mount Seir, the caveman type people, that was, that was, they lived like cave people. So that's where the caveman stuff comes from. And I mean, so I guess getting deeper and deeper into the woods. Almost went about an hour and a half. It went 30 minutes longer than I planned, but it was just a lot that I wanted to say, I guess. And my audience didn't beat me up from what I could see. I don't know. Maybe I might have other comments in one of my other feeds, but didn't beat me up too much and was willing to hear the information. And if there's any more, let me see. I think there's a couple of other links which I was going to give you. I would just say if you want to look up, I would say look up King Bulan, and King Bulan, and that's who Khazar comes from. Which is funny. Ashkenaz actually has Khazar kind of in it, and it's all kind of near the same regions and everything. But the people who are Ashkenazi are not actually Khazars, or they actually come from more Mount Seir. Well, not all, but some, and so they're mixed throughout all the different people. Some being, I believe, of Jewish blood, some not being of Jewish blood. That's for everybody else to sort out. But my biggest thing was what I wanted to disclose is that they're hiding the fact of who a big chunk of the biblical people were talking about. Let's see, ask questions and it will be given to you so you will find, knock the door. Yes, so true. I've been asking for so much discernment, and this is where a lot of this information has come to me. And it's like, I asked for it to come as a flood, and it's come as a flood. So it's been hard to try to put it all out there. And I realized, like, when you read that stuff and you start realizing biblical prophecy starts explaining all this stuff. And the thing is, when you sit in an Orthodox European Euro-Christian mindset, you're not going to understand a lot of these things because you're not going to read all of these extra books and you're not going to do this extra research because they just say, faith and hope and everything is fine. And I mean, if they don't realize what it says, God's not coming back with Hallmark cards. It literally says he's coming back to wet his sword and his garments will be stained of blood. So if that sounds nice to some of you, I don't know. But I mean, that says that, hey, you better get in line. And whatever you believe getting in line is, I'll let you do that. I will do what I need to do. Um, but this has been, the political matrix. I'm so glad to have you all with me. I think I went through all the other topics. I'm sure, lay it in the comments. Oh, I said I was I guess I'll tell you really quickly. I got a couple more minutes before it hits 1:30. History of King Bulan, which you could all look this up also. But King Bulan, short history is he was looking at threats from the Byzantine Empire and looking at threats from Muslim nations and Christian nations, and he brought together the people of the priests of both faiths and the Omar, and he's like, okay, I'm thinking about converting to a religion. Which one should I convert to? Why should I convert to yours, or why should I convert to yours? And they both go on and on fighting. Can't make up his mind which one is better. And so he asked, which group do you dislike the most? And they both said that they dislike Jews, the Jewish religion, the most. So the Christians were fine with Jews, the Muslims were fine with Jews. And so that's when he chose to make his nation Jews. And he forcefully converted his whole entire nation. And it stayed a Jewish state for 500 years. And that is actual history and actual fact. And so that is where a lot of the actual Jewish people get where their faith and tradition actually comes from. There could have been some people who have moved into those areas and they were mixed in that way, but unfortunately, a large majority of those people actually are not of the line of the biblical, Israelites. Let's see what signs say. Had some figuring out at Kevin Tiny Do, a couple of pulleys, ropes, possibly sound makers. Okay, I guess I'm a little lost there, but yeah, I guess that's all I have. That was the last little bit. This has been shoot, I'm almost about to forget what show I'm on. The Political Matrix. I'm your host, Young Morpheus, doing a solo run here. Just let you guys know some of the topics that we want to go into. I said we're going to talk about slavery. We talked about it, overview, and next week we're going to go back. And now that we've kind of pulled back the mask and talked about that 1% of the 1% of the 1% who is, you know, merged himself into society, blended themselves in, and is running a lot of wicked things. We will go in a little bit deeper on how on some of the things where they've actually how they've corralled a lot of their power. Yes, next Saturday we're gonna go into how they some of the major events which locked up power for a couple of these families, and um, we already know one of the family is this is going to go off of some lies, and this what we were talking about earlier with the whole whitewashing of Jesus, and this will go into some of those royal families how they try to lie and pretend that they were descendants of royal lines, going into like Mary Magdalene. We'll talk about a little bit into the Da Vinci Code, the movie, next week, next Saturday. Um, what else? And then that'll also go into like some of the things with World War One, World War Two that we don't actually talk about or know about. Am I going to say that Hitler was a good guy? No, 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 no. Don't get me mistaken. I'm going to go down that pathway. But what I am going to go into is um, provocations which were not known about, which some of those very, very ultra powerful people decided to start pushing and motivating the whole entire Jewish population to do. Um, uh, with boycotts, because this will go into some of the financial power that 1% were using to manipulate the masses. So that'll be kind of the first angle into that, and then I believe hopefully at that point, then since you all are still with me and you haven't thought that I was completely outside of my brain, even though I am a little bit, um, then we'll go into the actual occult and symbolism, and then after that, hopefully we can get down to the entertainment industry and how they use music and frequencies and vibrations. And Ziggy, you're definitely going to enjoy that, especially how you were talking about energy and stuff. But I didn't want to try to say too much now and get myself going into too many different directions. So that's it. That's been it for the show. Thank you all for joining me. Uh, Blessings to you all, and I do absolutely love sitting down and chatting with you all, and enjoy the feedback and what you all provoke me to think about also. This has been the Political Matrix. I'm your host, Young Morpheus, and get with me tomorrow for a very special show on my Young Black Leaders Forum. I'm going to have a childhood friend, high school friend, which I grew up with, who runs his own channel, the Dre Max Show, out of Kansas City. He is going to be joining me tomorrow, and I believe that'll be 4 o'clock Central, 2 p.m. Pacific, and 5 p.m. What is that, Eastern. So yeah, that's it. I'll get my Ouija board ready. Oh Lord, I'll let you play with it.